Dr. Christian's office. Oh, this is Judy. How are you, Louise? Oh, I'm fine. How's that hand?
The Vaseline Program, presenting a new prize play, Diagnosis After Death. Written by Milton M. Lieberthal, captain in the Medical Corps, Moore General Hospital, Swannanoa, North Carolina. Starring Jean Hersholt as Dr. Christian, Claude Rains as Dr. Alexander Webb, and Helen Clare as Judy Price.
Well, you can't be too careful about lighting the oven. Lots of people get fingers burned that way. I'm glad you had Vaseline petroleum jelly handy. Why, yes, it does both. Brings cooling relief, and it helps to promote healing. Why, just recently, I was reading an official medical report describing how effective petroleum jelly was in treating victims of that frightful Coconut Grove fire. Astonishing recoveries followed an improved treatment that includes the local application of petroleum jelly. Well, I'm not surprised you have it on hand. Vaseline petroleum jelly is the world's leading brand, ideal for minor household burns. Yes, use it the same way anytime anyone gets burned. Cover the burn with Vaseline petroleum jelly spread on fine mesh gauze, then bandage firmly but not tightly. If the burn is deep or covers a wide area, always call the doctor. But always keep Vaseline petroleum jelly in your medicine chest. It comes in both jars and handy tubes. Well, do call again soon, Louise. Bye.
We have interesting news for all Dr. Christian fans tonight concerning our star, Jean Hersholt, who leaves by plane tomorrow for Denmark in the interests of the America-Denmark Relief Society, which he heads. In his absence, motion picture star Claude Rains, in the role of Dr. Alexander Webb, will take over Dr. Christian's practice. Mr. Hersholt himself will tell you more of his plans at the close of the program. And now to our play, Diagnosis After Death. And in it you will meet for the first time Dr. Alexander Webb, played by our guest star, Claude Rains. The play begins on an early morning in River's End.
Wexty, read all about it. Senator Frederick's found dead and drunken spree. Wexty. Here you are. Thank you, sir. All right, folks, read about the senator found dead.
Tommy, let me have a paper, please.
Oh, hello, Miss Judy. Here you are.
What's all this about a drunken senator?
Senator Fredericks kicked the bucket while he was drunk last night. Serves the old buzzard right. Here you are, sir, right here. So long, Miss Judy.
Senator Fredericks? Oh, how awful. Dr. Webb? Dr. Webb!
Good morning, Judy. What's all the excitement?
Listen to this horrible story. Senator Fredericks found dead after drunken spree.
What?
Lawson Fredericks, 60-year-old state senator from Chatham County, was found dead early this morning near his home. He had been seen leaving his residence earlier, staggering noticeably, apparently under the influence of alcohol. The senator was a prominent Dr. Webb, what's the matter? Are you ill?
No, Judy, go on.
Are you sure? You look pale.
Oh, no, it's nonsense. I'm all right. Does it say how he died?
No, Oh, yes, here it is. Senator Fredericks, while apparently drunk, lost his footing on the curb and struck his head on the pavement.
What a terrible thing, Judy. What a terrible thing.
Dr. Webb, you are ill.
No, Judy, no, I'm not. I'm upset. Perhaps if I had...
If you had what?
Nothing. I'm going to my office. Will you see that I'm not disturbed?
Oh, don't forget you have an appointment to examine Mrs. Stone's little boy at 9.
You'd better cancel it.
Dr. Webb, you are disturbed. Won't you let me help?
You're very kind, Judy. Very kind, but no. Just cancel the appointment with this stone jar. I must think clearly.
Judy, I must see Dr. Webb at once.
Mrs. Fredericks, I didn't expect... Please sit down. We were so shocked by your terrible loss, Mrs. Fredericks.
Thank you. Where is Dr. Webb?
Why, he's in his office, but he asked me to see that he was not disturbed.
Is he alone?
Well, yes.
Will you be good enough to tell him I'm here?
I'm afraid that I can't...
Please do as I say. He'll see me.
I'll tell him you're here, Mrs. Fredericks. Just sit down a moment. You must be tired. I'll be right back.
Shocked by my terrible loss. The big shot, Dr. Alexander Webb. He'll see me all right.
This way, Mrs. Fredericks. Dr. Webb will see you now.
Thank you. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Margaret. This is rather a surprise.
Is it? Did you expect me to be prostrated with grief?
No, perhaps not.
And you might as well know that I didn't expect to find you crying either.
What do you mean by that?
I know perfectly well how you despised my husband. You hated him worse than I did.
I've never hated anyone.
You hated him. Hated him for the beast that he was. Senator Fredericks. A devil, that's what he was. A devil. He was only happy when he could hurt someone.
Now, Margaret, please. Someone might hear you. Besides, you can do nothing now.
Oh, can't I? I can do plenty. You listen to me, Dr. Webb. I haven't protected my children all these years for nothing. I don't intend to run the risk of letting the investigation of his drunken death uncover all his crooked dealings and spoil everything I built up for my children. My husband died a natural death. Do you hear?
How can you prove that?
You're going to prove it for me.
No. You can't mean that.
Yes, I can, and I do. You see, I know how you hated my husband. You hated him when he killed the land grant bill for your hospital. You hated him when he blocked your new water supply.
Oh, that's not true, Margaret. He was a hard man, a bad man, but I didn't hate him.
And you quarreled last night. You were with him just before he died.
How do you know that?
I heard you quarreling, bitterly. I'd know your voice anywhere. And after he went out, you followed him and killed him.
You know what you're saying.
Oh, I know all right. All I have to do is to tell them about your little scene with my husband. And you'll be held for murder. But I don't want you held for murder. I don't want a trial, an investigation. There'd be ugly things said, accusing fingers pointed. And no one would suffer except my children. And they must not suffer.
What do you want me to do?
You must testify to the county medical examiner that you've been treating my husband regularly for some disease from which he could have just dropped dead.
Oh, that's impossible. I never treated your husband. What could I say?
That's your problem, Dr. Webb. Unless you prefer to hang.
You're a hard woman, Margaret.
He made me that way. And remember, one false move and I'll tell them what happened. I'll tell them how you hated him, how you fought with him, how you killed him.
Oh, will you please go? Please, go.
Very well. I see you don't appreciate my giving you a way out of this. Remember, you have until this afternoon to tell your, or rather my, story. Goodbye, and thank you very much, Dr. Alexander Webb.
Judy, have you reached Dr. Christian yet?
No, Dr. Webb, but I've left messages all over. I'll let you know the minute he arrives. He couldn't possibly be here yet anyway. He has to drive back from Center City.
Lucky for me, he's the medical examiner of this county. I wish he'd hurry.
Dr. Webb, what's the trouble? You're as nervous as a cat. And look at you, cigarette ashes all over your coat. Oh, here, let me brush you off.
I'm sorry, Judy. I'm sorry. Perhaps I am a little upset. That must be Dr. Christian now. I'll wait for him in the inside office, Judy.
Please calm down, Dr. Webb. Oh, Dr. Christian, am I glad to see you.
Hello, Judy. What's it all about?
I have a hunch it's the Fredericks case. Dr. Webb seems unduly disturbed about it. Oh, let me take your hat.
Thanks, Judy. Where's Dr. Webb?
In the inside office. He wants to see you alone.
I'll go right in. Well, hello, Dr. Webb. What seems to be the trouble?
Trouble? Oh, no trouble at all. Sit down, Doctor. Fancy my asking you to sit down in your own office.
Well, it's going to be your office for the next few weeks. Remember? Oh, now sit down yourself, man, and stop pacing the floor. What's up?
Dr. Christian, as medical examiner, have you come to any conclusion about Senator Frederick's death?
Well, it seems there's only one conclusion to come to.
Really? Why do you say that?
Of course, everything points one way. Dr. Webb, Senator Fredericks was murdered.
Murdered? Are you sure?
Why, it's simple. Fredericks must have had enemies. Every man in public office has. Maybe he had a gang of them. Now, let's suppose they decided to get him. One of them comes to see him. The two men quarrel.
How do you know that?
Oh, well, I don't. Remember, I said supposing. But I'm almost sure he did have a visitor last night.
Who was it?
Well, I, of course, don't know his name or where he lives, but that's not important. I know all about him. I know the cigarettes he smokes from the stubs he left. I know how big he is from the imprints he left on the sofa cushions when he sat on them last night. I know the size of his shoes from the marks on the carpet, and I know that he knew how to fix a hypodermic.
You do know all about him.
Pretty smart, the man who did it. But not smart enough. And listen to this. Frederick's arms and legs were covered with little scars, Dr. Webb. The kind of scars a hypodermic would make. And there was a fresh needle mark on the outer side of his right arm.
You formed a theory based on that?
Well, the reasonable theory is that Senator Fredericks was a drug addict and that his visitor knew it. Perhaps he even supplied the drug to him. Then he fixed him a hypodermic, but he put a fatal dose in that syringe, and when the old boy took his usual evening shot, the work was done. The drug took effect after Senator Fredericks left the home, and it killed him. It's murder, pure and simple.
You seem to have it all figured out.
Dr. Webb, this case is cold turkey. Now all I have to do is to find the man who was in that house last night. As medical examiner, I am holding this inquest to examine the circumstances surrounding the death of Senator Lawson Fredericks. My examination of the deceased disclosed a minor bruise on the back of the head where he hit the pavement when he fell. There was a little coronary artery sclerosis, and there were no other findings. Oh, yes, except one. Mrs. Fredericks, was your husband a morphine addict?
Certainly not. What made you ask such a thing?
Because, Mrs. Fredericks, there were scars on his arms and legs that looked like they had been made by a hypodermic needle.
You must be mistaken.
We shall see about that. Did your husband have any enemies?
No. No. Can't you see you're all wrong? No one killed my husband. This whole procedure is distasteful and unnecessary, and I demand that it stop.
Why are you so sure that the senator died a natural death?
Because there is someone else in this room who can throw some light on that.
What? I believe she's looking right at us. At you, Dr. Webb.
Yes, Judy, she's looking at me.
Dr. Webb, what do you know about this?
Well, apparently no one has anything to say, Mrs. Fredericks.
Very well, then. If that's the way it is, I'll tell you what I know. And I'll tell you plenty. There is a man who hated my husband. He came to see him the night my husband died. They quarreled. I heard them. Then the man left. And that man was Dr. Alexander Webb. He killed Senator Fredericks.
Quiet, please. What makes you think they quarreled?
I heard them very clearly through the library door.
Dr. Webb, do you have a statement to make in your defense?
Yes, I think I have. It's true that I didn't like Senator Fredericks. Many years ago, I had the unpleasant task of signing the commitment papers that put his violently insane brother into an institution. The senator never spoke of this brother, and I believe I was the only one left who actually knew of his existence.
You think Senator Fredericks resented your knowledge?
I know he did. I suppose he thought he'd gave me some sort of hold over him that I might give away his secret and ruin his career. Well, finally, he worked out a plan that he thought would rid him of all this. He wanted to get his brother released and then abandon him somewhere to wander about aimlessly with the hope that he would be picked up by the police of some town as a nameless nobody and be locked up for good. And with that in mind, Senator Fredericks called me and asked me to visit him.
And did you?
Yes.
When?
The night he died.
I told you he was there. He did it.
Quiet, please. Go on, Dr. Webb.
When I arrived, Senator Fredericks was alone. He ushered me into the library and then suddenly said,
Dr. Webb, I have decided to have my brother released from my custody.
Why, for heaven's sake, why do you insist on doing such a thing?
I can't stand having him the skeleton in my closet. My position is too important. And there are unscrupulous people who would make capital of this situation if they knew about it.
Well, I think you're making a mistake. You know what a dangerous man he is. You can't just lose him. Besides, it's inhuman.
Well, I'm going ahead with it. And no one's going to stop me.
I'm sorry, Senator Fredericks, but I'll have to make every attempt to stop you.
You don't frighten me now, Webb, any more than you've ever frightened me.
It's my duty to warn you. If you go ahead with this, you'll not live to see the results.
Threats, eh? Well, let me tell you something.
I saw finally that he was beyond persuasion, so I left and went straight home.
That's a lie. He killed my husband. He's trying to deny it.
Is there any more to your story, Dr. Webb?
Well, the next day, Mrs. Fredericks came to my office and told me that she had overheard my conversation with her husband.
Why did she do that?
Well, she threatened to make my visit to her husband public and involve me in his death unless I promised to testify that he died a natural death.
He's lying. He's lying.
And do you think he did die a natural death?
Well, no, I don't.
Why do you say that?
Dr. Christian, after Mrs. Fredericks' visit to my office, I'll admit I was very worried. I'd had nothing to do with his death, but, you know, her story was a good one. She could establish a motive by using that conversation she heard through the door. She knew I couldn't deny that I'd visited him that night, and a doctor would be just the one to involve where the hypodermic method of administering a fatal dose had been used.
That's why you called me with such urgency?
Yeah, I had to talk to you. When you told me where the mark of a recent hypodermic injection was found, I knew this hypodermic was given to Senator Fredericks by someone else.
Why do you say that?
Because that hypodermic had been administered in the outer side of the right arm, just below the shoulder. Now, Senator Fredericks was right-handed, and that would be the most inconvenient place he could choose. Now, if he had given it to himself, he would have chosen one of his legs, so he could see what he was doing and have the use of both hands to handle the syringe. But if someone else gave it to him, it would have been in an arm.
Well, he had scars both on the arms and on the legs.
Exactly. So I came to the conclusion that sometimes he gave them to himself, and sometimes someone else did. It couldn't have been morphine in that case.
Will you explain why you say that?
Well, morphine addicts don't allow others to give them their injections. On the contrary, they hide their craving from the world.
If it wasn't morphine, what was it?
It must have been insulin. Senator Fredericks had diabetes, and so he took insulin by hypodermic every day. Sometimes he took it himself in the legs, and sometimes someone else gave it to him. in the arm.
Have you a theory as to that?
Who else would it be but a member of his family?
That's fantastic.
Oh, go on, Dr. Webb. This is quite interesting.
Now, the next question is this. Did that last dose given to him in his right arm kill him? I think it did. He was seen to stagger down the street. And he was a man who didn't drink.
Well, morphine doesn't do that.
No. But beginning insulin shock from an overdose of insulin does. Then, when the full effect of the overdose was reached, he fell dead. Obviously, the person who gave him that dose...
Stop it. Stop it. I can't stand it. I did it. I gave it to him. And I'd do it again. I hated him. I waited a long time to kill him like that. I waited for just the right moment. And for this moment, too.
Here, stop her. Quick, before she takes that.
And the curtain descends on another Dr. Christian prize play with our star Jean Hersholt waiting to bring you important news. Men, are you bothered by dry scalp? If you have dry, unruly hair, if loose dandruff begins to appear, if your scalp is tight and itchy, remember, these are signs of dry scalp. Scalp conditions that will be aggravated before long by hot summer sun, drying wind, and water. Start using Vaseline hair tonic today. Combat dry scalp. Check it easily, quickly, effectively. Vaseline hair tonic actually supplements the natural scalp oils. Contains no alcohol or other drying ingredients. Just 5 drops a day, applied with the comb or directly on the hair, checks dry scalp, tames stubborn hair, keeps it perfectly groomed. Also, a brisk Vaseline hair tonic massage before each shampoo loosens dandruff, stops itchy tightness. Remember, more bottles of Vaseline hair tonic are sold today than of any other hair tonic in America. Try Vaseline hair tonic. It's ideal care for scalp and hair. Vaseline hair tonic is one of the many Vaseline brand products made by the Cheesebro Manufacturing Company, owners of the trademark Vaseline. And now here are Jean Hersholt, who plays Dr. Christian, and Helen Clare, who plays Judy Price.
Thank you very much, but save your applause for our guest star, Claude Rains. And let me say now, Claude, how pleased we all are to have you on our Dr. Christian program for the next few weeks.
I'm very pleased to be here. I hope Dr. Alexander Webb doesn't get into any more jams in your absence.
You were simply wonderful in the play, Mr. Raines, to figure everything out like that. But what an introduction to River's End for you.
Well, I hope Dr. Christian's patients get the story straight.
I'll see that they do. You can depend on it.
Well, that's very nice of you, young woman. Already I can see that much of Dr. Christian's fabulous success is due to Judy Price, the perfect secretary.
Oh, thank you for Judy. Jean, what's going to happen to the announcement of the $2,000 Dr. Christian Award? Wasn't that all set for next week?
Yes, but it will be postponed now until my return the latter part of June. My trip to Denmark is a mission for the America-Denmark Relief Society, of which I am the head, and is made to acquire a first-hand picture of conditions in Denmark as a result of the war. I hope to bring you on this program a first-hand account direct from Copenhagen of what I find there. Meanwhile, I invite you to listen to the Vaseline program next week with Claude Rains in the role of Dr. Alexander Webb, taking over for Dr. Christian, and Helen Clare in her usual role of Judy Price. They'll present a new and clever Dr. Christian Price play written by Ruth Cornwell Woodman of Rye, New York. And so now, until you hear my voice on this program coming to you from Copenhagen, Denmark, I'll say au revoir.
This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.